Hi, I'm Joel Lattis, and this is my introduction video for EDL 853. I currently have a job as a COVID-19 site coordinator for Derby Public Schools. This is new to me. I just started it in July. Before that, I spent about 15 years as a special education teacher at El Paso Elementary at Derby Public Schools. And previously to that, I was a para, a custodian, and a substitute teacher. I've done a lot of committee work for the district too, as part of building my own capacity as a leader. And then I also serve as president of our local teachers association, and I'm in my second year of doing that work. A little bit of information about my family. My wife, Angela, is an elementary music teacher in Hayesville, Kansas, which is um, virtually next door to Derby. We have three sons. My oldest, Wilson, just started sixth grade at our middle school. My second son, Henry, is in third grade, and my youngest, Oscar, is in first grade. So I do want to spend a little time, of course, talking about inclusive cultures. And an inclusive culture is important because it's open to change and it accepts all type of learners. And then ultimately it increases the learning of the students and also, honestly, the educators who are a part of it. An administrator, when an administrator is maintaining a school culture, they need to identify components of that school culture that enables it to be inclusive, and then just make sure that those are consistent pieces in the daily practice in the building. I think it's really important, especially when you look at times when you might have significant staff turnover, to really identify those core values and those priorities and how they can, just be carried through and structured to be part of the institution and not dependent on people. And then if a school doesn't have that culture, the school leader needs to start first by setting the tone. You can always walk into a school and tell if it's inclusive or not by the tone in which you're received. And I think that's a huge piece that the school leader can own and lead on. And then we also want to talk about advocacy, which is critical to the educational process. And I've been an advocate as, looking at my work for my students, and then also for my peers as an association member and leader. So, by advocating for someone else, students, educators empower them, but they also let them know that there's someone in their corner. A student will know the teacher who advocates for them, and they'll know that they have their back. So I really believe a school leader can encourage advocacy by being open to it. Principals should be open to teachers who advocate for their students and for their colleagues. And, advocacy can always be done respectfully. And I think that's important to point out. And then, if issues arise through advocacy, it's the job of the school leader to address them. And so kind of going back to developing some plans and some strategies to guarantee a culture of inclusion. I think it's important to prepare teachers to be inclusive educators and do that through job-embedded continual professional development. In terms of creating inclusive academic environments, I think that's where providing multi-tiered systems of interventional supports are critical to maximize the learning opportunities for all students. Curriculum needs to be looked at both through the lens of how it encourages deeper and more critical thinking, as well as how it teaches just basic learning concepts. And then also, it's important to integrate student populations as much as possible. And as a former special education teacher, my brain always goes to the least restrictive environment for all students, and just making sure that you've got all of your students in with their same age general education peers as much as possible. It's also really important to create a respectful school community that is as reflective as it can be of the student population of the building. That community also needs to be a place for open discussion and communication about issues as they arise. And finally, it's important to respect the rights of all learners, and that's regardless of their ability, their gender, their race, their religion, or their sexuality. It's also really important to gain an understanding of the learners in your building on a group and an individual level, and then also encourage your staff to do the same. As a school leader, you can know the students in your building, but at some point, the onus to do that falls on the classroom teacher and any support teachers. It's important to have high expectations and also develop the leadership and build capacity both in your students through student leadership programs, but also in your staff through advisory councils and various other leadership teams that can help make decisions for a building. I think it's always important for anyone to focus on the positive and build on the things that students can do. And finally, just three things that I thought were key, and that's to build relationships, make data-based decisions through collective processes, and then finally collaborate. There are negative assumptions that impact inclusive cultures. Some of these assumptions are that different groups have predetermined outcomes, that each student should be able to master content at a pace, each pace. So not an individualized pace. And then finally, I think one that's a little more subtle is that assumption that every teacher in a building is going to be 100% on it every day. And that thinking is, just two phrases that kind of reflect that are, I can do this and I can do this every day, or thinking they should be able to learn it. It's not looking at an issue that needs to be addressed. It's looking at a failing. And so a school leader can change and challenge these assumptions by setting the tone and modeling practices. Coaching staff is a huge piece to help them build their own understanding of educational differences. And that'll help those teachers do the same with their students in their classroom. And then finally, it's easy to walk the walk, but not easy to talk the talk. And so I said that wrong. It's easy to talk the talk, but not easy to walk the walk. And so it's important for educational leaders to model these behaviors and just show, not only just tell people what they need to do, but also show them. And finally, just in closing, it's critical that school leaders intentionally do this work to create and maintain these environments. Students learn best when their basic needs are met. And one of those basic needs is that they feel safe. And inclusive school environments help do this. Here are my references. And with that, I would just say thank you. And I'm looking forward to learning with you through this class.